Welcome back, everyone. So today we're diving into a specific explainer that tackles one of those classic accounting puzzles that literally trips up so many people. We're talking about calculating diluted earnings per share, specifically under MFRS 133 when you're hit with a mid-year partial conversion of convertible debentures. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful and frankly a bit intimidating, right? But don't worry, we're going to put on our forensic accountant hats today. We're going to track the math, find what I call the missing time effects, and really just crack the notoriously tricky if-converted method step by step. By the end of this, you'll have a rock-solid framework for any partial conversion scenario. Okay, let's look at our roadmap for cracking this case. We'll start with the core idea, then set up our scenario and calculate the basic EPS. From there, we're fixing the numerator, fixing the denominator, getting that final diluted result, and wrapping up with some quick takeaways so nobody gets lost in the math. All right, section 1, the core idea. This is all about reality versus potential. So why doesn't basic EPS just tell us the whole story? Well, the central conflict we're trying to resolve is really between reality and potential. See, basic EPS only looks at the actual shares currently out there. But a convertible debenture? That's a piece of debt that might, at some point, magically transform into ordinary shares. And when only a part of that debt is converted halfway through the year, well, our basic EPS completely misses the full picture. We essentially have to hunt down the missing time effect for the shares that did convert, while also accounting for the ones sitting there that haven't converted yet. To solve this, we bring in the if-converted method. This method asks a really simple hypothetical. What if all these potential shares had actually been converted on day one, at the very beginning of the year? To figure that out, we have to adjust our profit to shares fraction in two ways. Up top, in the numerator, we adjust the profit by adding back the after-tax interest we would have saved. And down on the bottom, the denominator, we add in those extra assumed shares. We've got to investigate both ends to see the true diluted picture. Moving to section 2, scenario and basic EPS. Let's establish our baseline reality. Okay, let's lay out the facts of our case. We're starting with a profit after tax of 905,000 ringgit. On January 1st, we kicked off the year with 1 million ordinary shares. Now, we also have 500,000 ringgit in 8% convertible debentures. If you fully converted those debentures, they turn into 100,000 potential ordinary shares. But here is the messy clue, the real curveball. Only 40% were actually converted, and it happened late in the game on October 1st. So that gives us 40,000 actual new shares issued on that specific date, which leaves 60,000 potential shares unconverted, just hanging out. Oh, and keep that 25% tax rate in mind, because, well, the tax man always takes his cut, and we are absolutely going to need that number later. First things first, we have to calculate our baseline, the basic weighted average number of ordinary shares, or WANOs for short. Remember, basic WANOs only cares about reality. So for the first 9 months of the year, January through the end of September, we only had our starting 1 million shares. That's 1 million times 9 over 12. Then, boom, October 1st hits and those 40,000 new shares pop into existence. For the final 3 months of the year, we had 1,040,000 shares. So 1,040,000 times 3 over 12. When you calculate those pieces and combine them, our basic WANOs comes out to a nice, clean 1,010,000 shares. And that lets us find our baseline EPS. We just take that actual profit after tax of 905,000 ringgit divided by our basic WANOs of 1,010,000 shares, and we get exactly 89.6 cents. I like to call this 89.6 cents our baseline anchor. It's the strict reality of the company's earnings per share based only on what actually happened. But since we're acting as forensic accountants today, we know this isn't the most conservative picture. Now we need to go find the dilution. All right, section 3, fixing the numerator. This is where we start tracking the money. Now, what's really interesting about this part is how beautifully the math chunks into two completely distinct pathways. The absolute secret here, separate the converted portion from the unconverted portion. Just split them up. Let's start with the 40% that actually converted on October 1st. Before they converted, they sat there as debt for 9 months, right? So we take the 500,000 ringgit debenture, multiply it by 40%, then times the 8% interest rate, times 9 over 12 months. Then, and this is absolutely crucial, we multiply by 75% to remove that 25% tax. That gives us 9,000 ringgit unsaved after-tax interest. Next up, we look at the 60% that never converted. They were debt for the full 12 months. So we do 500,000 times 60% times 8% times 12 over 12 months times 75%. That saves us another 18,000 ringgit. Add those two chunks together, and we've got a total of 27,000 ringgit in net of tax interest saved. So by adding that 27,000 ringgit back to our actual profit after tax of 905,000, we've successfully secured our new adjusted profit figure. Our adjusted numerator is now 932,000 ringgit. Boom, we have officially fixed the top half of our equation. Which brings us to section 4, fixing the denominator. It's time to find the missing time. Just like we did with the interest, we're going to split our investigation right down the middle into 2 parts. First up, those 40,000 shares that converted on October 1st. In our basic calculation earlier, remember they only existed for 3 months. But under the if converted method, we have to pretend they were there from January 1st. That means they have 9 months of missing time. So 40,000 shares times 9/12 gives us 30,000 extra shares we need to add. Second, we look at the 60,000 potential shares that never converted at all. We just assume they existed for the full year. 60,000 times 12/12 is just, well, 60,000 extra shares. Combine those 30,000 missing shares with the 60,000 potential shares, and we get exactly 90,000 total extra shares to tack onto our denominator. And when you look at these metrics side by side, it really proves the impact here. We start with our basic denominator, our basic WANOs of 1,010,000. Then we add that newly discovered increase of 90,000 assumed shares. That balloons our bottom number to an adjusted denominator of exactly 1,100,000 shares. The bottom of our fraction is now totally locked in. Let's move to section 5 and see how this builds. The final diluted result. This is the grand reveal. Okay, let's bring it all together. We take our adjusted numerator, that's the 932,000 ringgit of assumed profit, and we divide it by our adjusted denominator, the 110,000 assumed shares. Do the math, and it gives us a final diluted EPS of exactly 84.7 cents. Let's just put these two numbers side by side for a second. Our reality, the basic EPS, was 89.6 cents. But our hypothetical worst-case scenario, the diluted EPS, is 84.7 cents. And this brilliantly illustrates the entire point of this exercise. Because 84.7 cents is lower than 89.6 cents, we have mathematically proven, beyond a doubt, that the convertible debenture is indeed dilutive. It literally reduces the earning power per share, which is exactly the kind of warning the MFRS 133 standard requires companies to give to their investors. Finally, Section 6, Quick Takeaways. Consider this your cheat sheet for the exam. Here are your 5 golden rules to walk away with today. 1. Always establish your baseline anchor first by calculating actual PAT and basic WANOs. 2. The absolute secret to success here is dividing your calculations. Literally, physically separate the portion that converted from the portion that didn't. 3. When you're adjusting the top, always add back the interest strictly net of tax. 4. When adjusting the bottom for shares that did convert, only add the missing period before the conversion date. And 5. For the shares that didn't convert, add the full year effect. If you just follow those 5 steps, you honestly can't go wrong. If we take a step back and look at the complete roadmap now, when we first started this explainer, an overview like this might have looked incredibly intimidating, right? Just a chaotic mix of dates, percentages, and fractions. But now, it's a perfectly logical map, and you've completely mastered it. You can clearly see the core idea, the baseline calculation, the distinct adjustments for the top and bottom, and finally, that definitive dilutive proof. You know exactly how every single number in this framework is derived. It's like a giant puzzle, and you just put all the pieces together. You now possess the forensic accounting framework to handle partial mid-year conversions with total clarity. So armed with the missing time method and this highly structured approach, I've got one final question for you. Are you ready to conquer the next complex partial conversion scenario your exam or your career throws your way? Next time you see a convertible bond, don't just see the debt, look for the missing time. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.